Now, Andrew, as I mentioned at the start of the program, my guest in a few moments is the Trade Minister, Dan Tehan. On that front, what have you picked up? Is a UK-Australia FTA looking likely to be finalised when the Prime Minister heads to number 10 Downing Street?
I don't think it will be, Kieran, unless there are some late developments. Scott Morrison mentioned again today that he had spoken to Boris Johnson today about this. They're due to meet in the next couple of days in London. So it will be interesting to see. But my information so far is there have been some sticking points on getting this in principle agreement. Perhaps Dan Tehan can shed some light on that in a minute, but they just might not get there. They might have the bilateral without that particular agreement. Scott Morrison wants to get it right. He doesn't want to just do it for the sake of an announcement and then have arguments down the track. I asked him when we arrived in the UK on Friday morning at the RAF base in Oxfordshire how the agreement was going, and he had this response. And how's the free trade deal looking before you go?
Still got a bit of work to do yet. Look forward to seeing him next week particularly. He'll be very busy over the summit over the next few days. That's why we've arranged the time on the other side of the summit to spend quite a bit of time together.
Okay, so we'll get to Dan Tehan shortly on what those sticking points might be. Let's get a bit of a behind-the-scenes look, though. You've been right on the front line there at those talks at the G7. What have you picked up in terms of some of the banter, some of the rapport behind the scenes?
Well, they had this photo shoot today. They had a photo shoot yesterday with the actual G7, and then another one today with Boris Johnson welcoming the plus nations, if you like. South Africa, India, we know, aren't here, and Australia amongst them. So Scott Morrison had to march up and give Boris Johnson the elbow bump, and Boris Johnson actually came on stage first. We were several metres away from him, and he said to the reporters and photographers, afternoon, to which they said, he said morning, to which they said afternoon. He looked at his watch then. Then Scott Morrison came along and went for the elbow bump. And he says, I'm always comfortable on a beach, because it was at the beach at Carbis Bay. Beautiful spot, I have to say. And Boris Johnson said, Bondi, eat your heart out. So certainly a bit of light-hearted banter there. I've got to say I'm freezing right now, Kieran. So don't worry, there's no comparison between Cornwall and Bondi Beach, because this feels like a Sydney winter's day here right now.
And there's no comparison either, is there, in terms of where the UK's at in terms of COVID-19 compared to Australia? You've personally had some experience of what life's like where COVID-19 still has a pretty strong presence, or very strong presence. Yeah,
well, it has been extraordinary, and I've been talking to you off air about this the last couple of days, and I just wanted to share it with the viewers. This really is a different world over here. It seems to me that every second or third person I speak to has either had COVID, and not a very pleasant experience, mind you, or one of their friends or neighbours has had COVID. So many people here have had COVID, and I've heard a lot of the London-based Australian journalists, for example, have had it. I've spoken to them about their experiences, and they've spoken about not having a sense of taste for 2 months, having a 40-degree temperature for 2 weeks, and Panadol doesn't work in relation to it. And every day, for me to get into the G7 summit, I have to give myself a COVID test, give myself a swab. So we know we go along to the nurses and the doctors and get these tests when we have a cold in Australia. I've been instructed, as has the cameraman here, Dan Moore, and our other colleagues, to shove this thing up our nose every morning and up our throat, then put it in some liquid, then put it on a stick, which looks like a pregnancy test. You might have a look at it here. And if it's one line, you're right. If it's 2 lines, you got COVID. And I've heard that this has been used in England for school children, this sort of rapid test for office workers to attempt to stop the spread, religiously followed in the G7. Everywhere you go, you have to show your pass and this result. I wonder whether these tests couldn't take off in terms of preventing lockdowns in Australia as well. When we landed on Friday at RAF Bryce Norton, I did ask the PM about any concerns he has in relation to contracting COVID here, because we had 3,000 cases a day last week here. It's now 7,000 to 8,000 new cases a day. So despite vaccinations, the virus seems to be coming back, and this is what he had to say. The cases here in the UK have gone from 3,000 a day to 7,000 a day. You've come into a country which is living with the virus. Do you have any concerns about that?
Well, I'm sure that all the normal health protocols are being observed, no doubt about that. It's a big undertaking to pull together a summit of this nature in a pandemic, and I commend the UK for pressing ahead and doing it in this way. You know, we've met on so many occasions over the past 18 months over screens. There's no substitute for leaders getting together and doing what we're doing now, and there's never been a more important time to be doing that. That said, it's a timely reminder about how the pandemic is raging. Whereas back in Australia, I understand, my latest report, there was 0 community cases in Victoria today. We welcome that, absolutely welcome that. But here in the UK, 7,000 cases a day in a country that has a vaccination rate on first doses well over 70%. Now, I welcome the fact that we're not seeing in this latest wave in the UK the level of fatality that we've seen on previous occasions. And I think that goes a lot to what the vaccine does to protect against serious illness. But any suggestion that vaccination rates in their 70s doesn't lead to a high number of cases, well, the UK experience, I think, is telling a very different story.
Yeah, some interesting insights from you there on what it's like, those daily tests for you and all concerned at the G7.